There's another name I want to bring up from the Arizona Cardinals that Bleacher Report, and we take that with a grain of salt. Bleacher Report has said should be a trade target for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I guess he's a linebacker. Some say he's not a linebacker. The person I'm about to talk to says he's not a linebacker, but maybe he is a linebacker, but also maybe he's somewhere else. Isaiah Simmons, Arizona Cardinal, 24 years old. Didn't realize how young this guy was. Former 8th overall pick 3 or 4 years ago now. This is his 4th year in the league. He got benched last season, but he also had 2 interceptions and 4 sacks. Option for the Pittsburgh Steelers? Impressive option for the Pittsburgh Steelers, or just like, no, this is stupid. Don't talk about it.
I don't think it's stupid. I mean, look, yeah, he was a little bit of an underwhelming prospect through these first few years in the league. But I think there's some obvious talent there that you can't ignore. There's some versatility that's really intriguing. And also, I don't know. I do kind of take real early seasons for someone in the Arizona Cardinals system. I take him with a grain of salt too.
Yes.
I don't know. This is not the most well-run organization in professional football. I think a change of scenery could really benefit Isaiah Simmons, and I think there's a world where he moves to a different team with some veteran mentorship, where he can maybe come off the bench again and be just have a little bit less pressure on him, quite honestly, and really kind of transform his career and turn it around and realize some of that talent that made him. Would you say the 8th overall pick? Right? He was
8th pick.
Yeah,
in 2020.
Yeah,
2019.
I do remember. Yeah, I remember him coming out of Clemson like he was supposed to be the next big thing.
Yeah, he was it. Yeah. He was the first. I don't want to say he's the first, but he was you didn't know what he was.
Right.
You're just like, this dude's just phenomenal. Mm-hmm. That's all we know about him, is that he's the best player on the field when he's on the field. We don't really have a position for him. I agree with you though. That's what I said in my to-go yesterday, is that you come to Pittsburgh, that's a whole other world.
Right.
To say that it didn't work out in the Arizona Cardinals, and that's the reason it's not going to work out in the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's a totally, you're going to walk into Pittsburgh. First off, there are names in Arizona. I get it. You're going to learn from Budda Baker. Last year, you would have learned from J.J. Watt. You come to Pittsburgh, you got Minka Fitzpatrick, Patrick Peterson, Cam Hayward, T.J. Watt, Alex Highsmith, Larry Ogunjobi, DeMonte KZ, Keanu Neal. The names are endless. It is ridiculous, the veteran depth that they have on this team. So to say, and then Landon Roberts, if he's going to play middle linebacker, is also there. So you're going to, there is no pressure. Isaiah Simmons comes to Pittsburgh, and he's not he's not a superstar. He's not the guy that has to make it. He's not the 8th overall pick. He's a guy that they traded for, that they hope turns into something and has a ton of potential, which, again, I agree with you. I think you just you make that change, and it's huge. I think finding a position for him is big, but as we're going to talk about here soon, there's a belief that maybe his best spot is a nickel/slot corner, which I think actually works even better for the Pittsburgh Steelers. If they're going to approach this guy and say, "Hey, come play slot corner for us," that is the move. That is in my opinion, that if you're going to clear up a spot, if you're going to make the last big splash, go get a guy that can play inside linebacker and nickelback.
Yeah. And I'm just interested what his kind of market rate will be, 8th overall pick, but underwhelmed. How much are you going to actually have to give up to get this guy if you really want him?
What do you think the number is? I would say so let's start a 3rd round pick. You think a 3rd round pick is too high? Do you think the Steelers would give that up? And do you think that that's
I feel like
starting point? You think higher, lower?
I feel like that's a good starting point. If I'm the Steelers, I would give up a 3rd round pick for Isaiah Simmons. I get the feeling the Cardinals would ask for a little bit more. They'd really play up the 8th overall pick, and a few years ago, still really young. We have a plan for this guy, whatever. But if they can get him for a 3rd round pick, I'd part with that in a heartbeat. I feel like.
Are you going higher? There's no way you're giving up a 1st round pick for Isaiah Simmons. No, but you giving up a 2nd?
2nd gets dicey. I don't know. I feel like you could maybe do a pick swap for a 2nd. I don't know, but
get a 3rd.
Yeah, something like that.
Send a 2nd, get a 3rd.
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe a 3rd and a 4th. I'd be tossing out there. 2nd, you're right. A 2nd round pick is, that's Joey Porter Jr. or Keanu Benton, and I'm taking both of those guys over Isaiah Simmons, hands down. Just I get the potential is different, the player is different, but I'm going to take a guy that I could start fresh with and say, well, we don't know if this guy's not going to make it. Isaiah Simmons, you're like, so far he has not made it.
Right.
Maybe that turns around, but I get it at 24 years old. Interesting. You think there's like a real, you think there's any interest from the Steelers there?
I mean, maybe. I mean, so you'd have to like kind of. Uh, I'd want the potential for him to be. I think if he was on the market, if they Steelers knew that he was definitively on the market, and the Cardinals were actually actively shopping him, there would be interest from the Steelers. But how much interest and whether that's actually a realistic possibility, I think remains to be seen. But I think if he was on the market, if he was on the table, they would absolutely be interested.
Yeah. I kind of agree with that one. All right. With that said, we're going to dive into a special interview. Very honored to have this guy back on the podcast, I should say. And with that, I present to you Donnie Drew. There's another guy I want to talk to you about. There's no motion. The waves are very quiet right now, but Bleacher Report tossed out the idea, and I like the idea of the Steelers trading for Isaiah Simmons. 24 years old, inside linebacker, question mark. You don't really know where he's going to play. You've been watching him for the last 2 years. I mean, he's young. He hasn't really found his position yet. Is that on the Arizona Cardinals? Does this guy still have that 8th overall pick potential? What do you get in Isaiah Simmons at this point in his career?
The problem with Isaiah Simmons is that he came into the league with a lot of potential, right? I mean, he was looked at as a unicorn. He ran, I think it was right at a 4.4, a sub 4.40, which is the fastest time I think almost ever recorded for an inside linebacker. Played a bunch of different positions. He played like safety, nickel, boundary corner, like linebacker at Clemson. Like he played a whole lot. And the problem with those guys is that you don't really get the opportunity to utilize them in all those different facets, especially whenever they're a rookie, because you want them to learn one position and you want them to master it before you go on. And where that kind of falls on Isaiah Simmons is he hasn't really mastered inside linebacker. He hasn't really mastered the nickelback role. I mean, he's long, he's rangy, he's athletic, but if you look at the numbers, Noah, when he's playing that inside linebacker spot, his success rate at, finding the ball carrier and actually bringing them down and tackling isn't super great. I think Pro Football Focus, I was peeling through the numbers the other day and said that the more run snaps that he had played, the worse his tackling percentage was, which obviously is not a good thing. And then you look at him in pass coverage, right? So it's like, okay, if he's not an inside linebacker, maybe we can move him at like nickelback or, safety or whatever. His targeting percentage was not very, very good at all, which shows that he wasn't super great in coverage. Obviously, he has the length to, stay with receivers and bat balls down. But I mean, if you watched him play last year in coverage, was not really anything special. And that's kind of like the catch-22 in Arizona. Yeah, he has a lot of potential, but so far that's all he's been, is just maybe this guy can be something. And that's why the Cardinals didn't pick up his 5th-year option, because they weren't going to pay that much money for a guy who could potentially do something, especially whenever they're in the early stages of the rebuild, and they don't want to commit to that.
Yeah, I totally get that one. Where do you see him fit most comfortable? Like if you were his coach, where are you putting Isaiah Simmons?
There's talk of him maybe becoming a better edge player, which if you're a Cardinals fan, that's a really familiar story, because Hassan Reddick was drafted to Arizona. They stuck him at inside linebacker. Didn't really do anything. They moved him to edge the last year of his contract. Did great. He said deuces. And then now he led the league in sacks last year for the Philadelphia Eagles, who played in the Super Bowl in Arizona.
Full circle.
So there's some talk about him potentially being a good edge rusher. Early in OTAs, he's been practicing with the defensive secondary, so he's probably going to be that like nickelback role again. No, I don't know, bro. I really do not know where he fits on an NFL field, because he hasn't, if anywhere you're going to keep him in the secondary, just because his speed, his length, and his range, but like he's not great at tackling running backs. And when he's been aligned on receivers and tight ends, he hasn't been superb in coverage. So maybe safety might be the way to go, but I don't know. And that's the problem, is I don't know. The previous coaching staff in Arizona didn't know, and it'll be really interesting to see what the current coaching staff under Jonathan Gannon and company think he can do.
So that leads me to this. So we don't know where he is. The Arizona Cardinals obviously don't have a fit for him. Are they looking to get rid of him? Like, is there real traction that the Cardinals would take some phone calls and say, hey, Isaiah Simmons is is on the block, we will talk about it.
I think if you ask the new general manager, Monty Austin, for it, he's going to give you that cookie cutter. Hey,
Yeah.
it's my job to answer phone calls. I wouldn't be doing my job if I'm not answering phone calls. I don't think there's any legitimate interest in moving Isaiah Simmons. They seem to be, at least whenever talking to media members, really excited about the potential of what he can do. But I think not picking up his 5th year was very telling, just in terms of it's more like a wait and see with the Cardinals at this point. I would not expect him to be moved at this point in time. No.
What about in the future? Like, what do we?
Well, he's a free agent after this year, so
I know, but I'm talking near future. End of training camp, still don't have a position for him. Like, are the Cardinals in a spot where they're like, we believe we could actually do something, let's keep our talent around? Or are they in a spot where if the Pittsburgh Steelers called and they said, here's a 3rd round pick for Isaiah Simmons, they're shipping out Isaiah Simmons?
I think a 3rd round pick would be tempting for them. They don't want to move off Budda Baker, who's 27 years old. So I don't think Isaiah Simmons being 24, I don't think they want to move off of him. I think they really want to see what he can do in Jonathan Gannon and Nick Rallis' new defense before they actually make any future calls on that. I think a 3rd round pick, considering what like Hopkins and what like Budda Baker might go for, that might be really tempting, but I don't know.
All right. Not the answer I was hoping for, but that's okay, because what I've learned in this conversation is that Isaiah Simmons really isn't that great, and there's a lot of question marks. Maybe
he can be great.
He can be great. Yeah, but you can't be great unless you're great.
The problem is that he's been nothing but potential, and that's what's been keeping people hopeful for him. Is that, oh man, he's long, he's athletic, he's a freak, he's a unicorn. But like, he's been nothing but potential since he came into the league.
What about a new environment? Like, we talked about new positions and so on and so forth. Right now, you look at that defense and it's Budda Baker, and then it's really like it's Isaiah Simmons. Like, Zay Collins, I guess. I don't know if he even did anything last year, Zaven Collins. But they're like a couple of names, but they're looked at as the guys. You come to Pittsburgh, you're not the guy. You're not even close to the guy. Do you think that environment change helps? And it doesn't even have to be Pittsburgh. It could be anywhere.
I think Pittsburgh would be a really interesting fit for him because you're right. Like he wouldn't be expected to be the playmaker for the Steelers, right? Because you have that dominant front seven. You have guys like Minkah Fitzpatrick roaming the defensive secondary. Who's the corners in Pittsburgh? It's Patrick Peterson,
Levi Wallace. That right now the nickel is quote unquote filled, but it's not filled. It's Chandon Sullivan out of Minnesota, who didn't really have a good year last year, and Duke Dawson, who's been on the practice squad, who's going to get an opportunity as well. But they don't really have like a solidified slot guy.
I'd be interested to see what he can do in that nickel role in Pittsburgh, just because you have so much talent around you. And I mean, we've kind of harped on this a little bit, but like it can also be a positive that like his versatility can be used to kind of be like that defensive chess piece that I think Terrell Austin can pretty much move around anywhere.
See, that would be nice. That would be a lot of fun. I think a change of environment. I don't know. I'm going to hold strong. I'm going to keep pushing the narrative that I think Isaiah Simmons should end up in Pittsburgh, but more question marks than I thought. At 24 years old, I was hoping that you'd come on here and just be like, oh yeah, man, he's just, Arizona's defense just stinks. And there's just, when everybody stinks, everybody stinks. Nobody's good.
Well, that is a valid point, but at the same time, like him on a personal level, like hasn't really shown. Like if you were going to redraft that, was it 2019?
Yeah, 2019. No, if this is year 4 for him, it'd be 2019. 2020.
Whatever draft he was in. If you were going to go back and redraft his draft class, he wouldn't be a top 10 pick.
No, probably wouldn't even be a first rounder. Judging off of right now, maybe late first rounder.
Yeah.
But, there's a lot of talent that comes out of draft classes that you realize it's just a lot of, there's some upside there.
Yep.
And that's all you're looking for. All right. That's not ideal, but it's an option for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And in May, when you have few positions, the Steelers have 2 roster spots left. At this point, they're just looking for anything in slot corner and inside linebacker, I guess, are, in my opinion, the biggest needs for this team. I think he could possibly fill both of them. It'll be interesting to see. Donnie, appreciate you. Don't want this to end, but
I know.
As everything, we got to call it a day. Thank you guys for jumping on. Everybody go check out all of Donnie's stuff over at allcardinals.com. What's your YouTube? Is that just All Cardinals as well?
Yeah, All Cardinals.
All Cardinals, and
giving away a Kyler Murray jersey soon, by the way. So
Is that worth big money in Arizona? Are they still Kyler Murray fans over there?
50-50. People hate him. People love him. He's by far the most polarizing dude I've ever seen. It's wild.
Polarizing in a good, like Ben Roethlisberger was the most polarizing dude for a long time. But like, you know what I mean? Like it's like, oh, I hate Ben, but I love Ben. You know,
right? But people hated Ben, but they like respected him as well because he brought Super
it's
Bowls.
Like this guy's gonna win. I can't stand him. Is that
dude,
the same way with Kyler?
If you took a straw poll of like 100 people in Arizona, 50 of them would be like, dude, like Kyler spends all day playing video games. Dude sucks. I don't know why the Cardinals still have him. And then the other like 50% of the people are going to be like, oh, well, you know, he's really talented. His team just sucks around him.
But what about now with the what was Gannon's thing when he saw him? It was like zoom, 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 bow, bow. You know, you're gonna do all those things. Remember the video?
That's the perfect Jonathan Gannon impression.
That was exactly what he did. You didn't see the video where he just saw Kyler. He's like, bow, bow, bing, 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 bing. That's, you know, new Kyler, new coach, new everything. It's exciting stuff. All right.